I just turned on the TV and saw what was happening out in Hoboken. So we don't know all the details, but this looks like there's already loss of life being reported. Our prayers go to the first responders to make sure that they can get people safely to safety and that people can be reunited with their families. This week, Congress sent to the President's desk a bill that provides funding to train our military and improve care for our veterans, our Milcon VA bill. It will also provide resources to address the Zika outbreak and relief for our fellow citizens recovering from recent floods in Louisiana, in West Virginia, and some other places. This concludes a pretty darn productive period. First long-term highway bill in 10 years. The first rewrite of our education laws in 15 years. The first update to our customs and border enforcement in a generation. The end of the 40-year ban on crude oil. A comprehensive opioid addiction and recovery law. Permanent tax extenders, which is one of the biggest steps one can take toward rewriting our tax code. When we return in November, I look forward to completing work on some very important key initiatives that just haven't quite gotten over the finish line. Tim Murphy's mental health reform, Fred Upton's 21st Century Cures initiative. Obviously, we passed our water resources bill last night. The Senate's passed theirs. We need to complete work on that. And I also am hoping that we can make progress on criminal justice reform. Lastly, Saturday marks the third anniversary of the rollout of Obamacare. It isn't so much limping toward that anniversary as this law is collapsing. This law is collapsing under its own weight. In a matter of weeks, Americans are going to face another round of steep and massive premium increases. Co-op programs are failing across the country, leaving people without coverage. These are fundamental problems. These are not problems that can be fixed by tinkering at the margins. This law does need to be repealed and replaced. And it needs to be replaced with real patient-centered healthcare reforms. This is our plan to do it. Page 20, and you will see our plan for a comprehensive replacement of Obamacare to finally give people what they want: patient-centered healthcare, more choices, lower prices. We need to give people a very clear choice in this election, a clear path. That is what we are endeavoring to do. We want to go bold, we are specific, and we're showing people that we are here to tackle the big challenges in this country before they tackle us. If you want to hear more about our Better Way agenda, go to better.gop. This is why we are here, to show the country that we can get things fixed and that we have a better path, and that is the conversation we're excited about having with our fellow citizens for the next month and a half. Questions? Yes, thank you. I can give you a copy if you'd like. Yeah.
Clear for a while that Democrats really wanted to see something done on Flint. Ultimately, we saw that 140 House Republicans voted against that amendment. So was your hesitancy to have that get in the CR debate, knowing where your conference was on this? And because of how many Republicans opposed that amendment, are you worried about what happens in the worded negotiations and whether Flint could sink the chances of a Florida vote?
No, I'm not worried about that. First, I'd say what happened is what I was hoping and planning on happening all along. I thought it was important to get Flint out of the continuing resolution debate and where it belongs in the water resources bill. Flint is a water resources problem that therefore should be addressed in water resources legislation. You're kind of mistaken when you say it was a Democrat request. We had a lot of Republicans asking for this Flint amendment to be addressed. Candace Miller, Fred Upton, John Molinar, Tim Walberg, Michiganders were asking me all year long on the need to address Flint in legislation. I always thought that the water resources legislation was the right way to go. This amendment passed in the Senate like 90-something votes, if I recall. So we always knew that this was the place to do it, was in the WRDA bill, and it came together very successfully. And just so you know, this was a bipartisan amendment. It was a Molinar and Kildee amendment. So this was something that a lot of Republicans, like I said, Candace Miller, I talked to her a lot about this over the last number of months, and other Michiganders, or Michiganians. What, anybody from Michigan? Michiganders, that's what I thought, yeah. So Michiganders, which, Wisconsin this weekend? Man, Wolverine's going down, I got to tell you. So we beat Michigan State already. So I'm probably going to eat those words, aren't I? Yeah. So I don't think it's going to be jeopardized at all. I think actually having the Kildee-Molinar amendment pass with a big bipartisan vote yesterday, and having, I forgot whose amendment it was in the Senate pass, with something like 97 votes, tells you that this is very close to being done, and that the word of the legislation is going to come together in lame duck.
Can you elaborate though on the thinking that it always belonged in WRDA because?
I think it belonged in WRDA because that's where authorizations occur for water resources projects.
Right, but the Democrats wanted was funding, and that wasn't germane. And
That wasn't germane because it was an authorization bill. The scope from the Senate bill is a little broader, and that's what we'll reconcile in conference. Chad.
Let me ask you this. So you're about a year into your speakership here. Your predecessor was criticized for not moving individual spending bills. We talked about this, not doing CRs, having to turn to the other side. I know you got well over the majority on the bill yesterday. But that said, they point out and say they didn't get a lot of things they wanted. They didn't get the spending number they wanted. They didn't get refugees in Syria. How are you at this stage, 11 months into your speakership, different than John Boehner when you speak to the Freedom Caucus?
We've actually passed appropriation bills. I think members of our caucus realize that when Harry Reid and Senate Democrats want to stop the appropriations process for political reasons and political motivations, they have the tools to do that. So I think people in our caucus understand the reality of the moment that this divided government presents us with. Having said all of that, we still have passed some appropriation bills. The Senate even has passed some appropriation bills. But I really believe that the Senate Democrats made a decision somewhere in this year to slow things down and prevent further activity. My hope is that after the election, they'll drop their political shenanigans and we'll get on to doing the serious business of actually appropriating. If we don't, we'll do another CR.
Well, why weren't some of those conservative priorities that I outlined in the funding Planned Parenthood?
I think people realize this is what divided government gets you. You don't always get what you want in divided government.
Divided on your side of the aisle.
Democrats have a vote in this. Democrats can filibuster bills. You know this as well as anybody else, Chad, and I think our members understand that. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, there have been suggestions recently by the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee and also in the Senate, chairman of the Finance Committee, that TPP still has some life in it, a lame duck Congress. From your point of view, again, is the TPP dead in a lame duck? And if I could, can you give me your thoughts on the latest warning by our Secretary of State, John Kerry, that U.S. leadership and credibility in Asia would be severely damaged if we delay in approving this?
Well, I have nothing to add more than I've already said. Nothing new to say on TPP. But if you talk about damaging U.S. leadership in the world, look at the Obama administration's foreign policy. I rest my case on that. Erica.
You talk frequently about the limits of divided government and said this morning you don't like divided government. But even in the best case scenario for your party in this election, you won't have 60 in the Senate. So could you talk about what you see foreseeable legislatively that could pass into law next year?
Honestly, this is our plan for 2017. Much of this you can do through budget reconciliation, and I think the rest of it is something that the vast majority of the American people want to see get done. Do we want to keep people stuck in poverty and on welfare, or do we want to change our welfare programs that are worked to get people from welfare to work? Do we want to get the regulations off the backs of our businesses so they can start creating jobs? Do we want to have the separation of powers so we have self-government? These are things that I think most Americans want, and I think they'll put pressure on their Democratic senators to do these things. A lot of what's in here is also something that's fiscal in nature. Those are things that you can do through a budget that you don't necessarily need 60 votes for. So this is our game plan for 2017. And as I mentioned this morning at the Ron Brownstein thing you were talking about, right? Unified Republican government is what it's going to take to get all of this done. Yeah.
I have two questions. The first one regarding leadership elections. The House Freedom Caucus, they're talking about some sort of request on your part to delay leadership elections until after the lame duck. And then also I wanted to ask about criminal justice reform. You guys did an internal survey, I guess, of Republicans, and most people said they were undecided on it. Some people, I guess, are worried about, protests, riots, and also about looking soft on crime. What are you going
the first question, I've never received that request. We're going to keep planning on doing things the way we've always done them when we come back from the elections for the next session. On criminal justice reform, we don't publish our whips, but we do know that we have more work to do to talk with our members about the merits of criminal justice reform. If you're a Judiciary Committee member who knows about this issue, you're in favor of it. It's very bipartisan, and it's conservatives that are leading the charge on this. Raul Labrador, Mike Lee, Bob Goodlatte. But there are a lot of our members who just have not looked into this issue well enough, and it's those undecided members who have not formed opinions yet that we're going to be communicating with in the weeks ahead.
What do you consider a good night for you on election night?
Yeah, winning.
How do losing only 5 seats, 10 seats?
Oh, I don't like the idea of losing any seats. I think a good night is keeping our strong majority, keeping the majority in the Senate, and Donald Trump winning, so we have unified Republican government. Anybody haven't talked for a while? Yeah, I agree with I agree with that. We think minibus is the proper strategy. We're not in favor of doing a big, massive omnibus. The fact that we got Milcon VA done already shows you we're getting pieces of these done and move smaller pieces of appropriation bills. And yes, we've got a lot of work to do. Our appropriators are going to be working all month, all October. It's not as if we're not in session, we're not getting work done. We're going to be working on these things so that in the fairly brief time we have in November and December, we can start moving appropriations bills. It's so much better to do appropriations than CRs, in our opinion. I don't have that. I don't know. Yes. Yeah.
Earlier this year, you raised questions about the unintended consequences that could be created by passage of JASTA. This was after the Senate had done so. And both the chairman of the Intelligence Committee and the Armed Services Committee had those concerns and in fact voted to sustain the veto. What changed your mind in terms of bringing this to the floor?
I think it's that the victims you want to have the victims get their day in court. We want to make sure that the 9/11 victims and their families had their day in court. At the same time, I would like to think that there may be some work to be done to protect our service members overseas from any kind of legal ensnarements that occur, any kind of retribution. So I'd like to think that there's a way we could fix so that our service members do not have legal problems overseas while still protecting the rights of the 9/11 victims, which is what JASTA did do.
Do you see that in the lame duck?
Wait, I don't know.
You said in your opening remarks back in criminal justice reform, you said that you thought there was some progress that could be made during the lame duck. McConnell just said.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
Criminal justice reform could get done. Have you talked to him about this, or do you plan to?
Over the year, we've talked about it. As you probably know, I'm a fan of criminal justice reform. We've gotten 11 bills out of Judiciary Committee now. 11 bills out of Judiciary Committee. So we're a little farther down the road than the Senate is on this. And we have basically been talking to our members, and many of our members just are unfamiliar with the details. And so we're still working with our members to make sure that they get there. I think it's good legislation. I think its time has come, and we're going to advance this issue as far as we can.